In the mirror, I just saw a person I didn't even recognize, and I'm not even talking about body weight or anything. Like, I just looked at a person, like, I was like, where's the person? Where's the sparkle in some ways, or where's the glam side of it? Like, everything felt like some long lost memory.
Here we are back on invisible work. The funny thing is, the month may change, the year may change even, but the amount of work a mom puts into running her household, taking care of her family and her child, well, that never seems to change. And to bring in another perspective on that thought, I have with me someone very interesting and someone you've probably already seen on social media, on film even, and I'm very happy to introduce you to her as my neighbor as well. Today we have with us Tamanna Tanweer Pasha, who's a former model and actor and now a social media content creator, an author, a life coach, and I'm going to let her fill in the gaps of everything I've missed in, the large CV of what you do. Hi Tamanna, how are you doing?
Hi there, Anjana. So good to see you besides the neighborhood park.
That's true, where our sons run amok and, create such havoc. But tell me, what has motherhood been like for you? Because I feel like I mostly see you either running around behind your son and doing that part, or then I catch you on social media every once in a while looking totally glammed up and dolled, and then I'm like, oh, I've forgotten she's the mum that I also meet at the park. So how does that work for you? How do you manage that dual life?
I think for the first few years, I completely forgot about the other part of life that I was living. I was the mom who wanted to take care of her child first, and of course, the idea of the preconceived notions that I had of what parenting is going to be before I had him, I was like, yeah, I'm going to have him, and then I'm going to be back at work within a few months, and I'm going to be completely right where life was. Nothing would have changed for me because I was always this go-getter doing 20 things at the same time. So I thought, yeah, well, having a kid is just going to be another added chapter to life. And little did I know that I would be like, everything shut shop for a while. And I didn't want to do other things. At that point of time, emotionally, I just wanted to be the mom. I just wanted to prioritize motherhood. And I almost didn't work for a good 4 years. Like, I barely just maybe an hour a day kind of something, nothing that took me away from him. And made him my priority, which I really thought I'm not gonna. I really thought before becoming a mom that the only way to go into this is to make sure that you are working and you're doing what you were doing before having a child.
Right.
But then when I had him, I realized how important it is to give those first few years and nurture, and to be able to be there for him. Just felt like that it deserved every moment. Like, if I could pause time and if I could hold him here in that space and time, that there was nothing that was more precious. And I'm just grateful that I live a life that allowed me to do that without feeling pressured, because I was not a part of the corporate hustle.
Yeah.
And because I was always working on my own. But still, it did take some peeling back, because, you see, thankfully I had done a lot of everything. So there was no FOMO. I wasn't going into it with FOMO. It was with a lot of contentment that I was going into it. But there was also this part where it felt like I'd forgotten everything of who I was.
Yeah.
When I looked in the mirror, I just saw a person I didn't even recognize. And I'm not even talking about body weight or anything. Like, I just looked at a person, like, I was like, where's the person? Where's the sparkle in some ways, or where's the glam side of it? Like, everything felt like some long lost memory.
Yeah, so I met Tamanna first when I was maybe about 5 or 6 months pregnant. I was walking in the park, happily waddling along with my bump, completely blissfully unaware of the kind of mayhem that was going to hit me in three months. And then you kind of, set a coffee date, and we took your son out in his stroller to go and have a cup of coffee or, something decaffeinated, I'm guessing. And Tamanna, you were the first person who actually ever introduced me to the horror of night feeds. And I must say, after that, my pregnancy was not quite the same ever. So how did you cope with that transition?
I was introduced after a few months of having my child into the term matter sense.
Right.
Like how we have adolescence. Matter sense is the phase where you are shifting hormones, your body is undergoing all these changes, except that it was so less spoken about.
Yeah.
And you're sleep deprived because you don't have a choice. So when I met you, I was this person, I was like, wait, everyone said such unrealistic, everybody just celebrated me like I was, this new bride feeling, right? Everyone was like, oh wow, she's pregnant, let's make her comfortable, can we take pictures? They would take pictures of me holding my bump, my friends and everyone else. And then when reality happened and you are the person doing it yourself, and I chose not to have a nanny for the first 4.5 years.
Right.
So I was literally in the midst of it with everything, covered with all kinds of fluid and in all of that. And I was like, no one gave me the reality check. No one, forget about the unglamorous side of it. No one even prepared me for the basic reality of what it's going to entail. And I did take some kind of birthing parenthood classes on, just how to give a massage, burping the baby, feeding the baby, sort of pre-baby classes.
Yeah.
Nothing got me like even 10% close to what the reality was going to be like. So I think when I saw a new and expectant mom, I was seeing a version of me that could have done with some mental prep of what I was going into. Because it was like being plucked out from a normal life, and the day I had my baby being thrown smash into like a roller coaster which did not end for months to come. So I think looking back at it, there's still times that I think that every mom to be should spend some time around kids, around parents with kids, and kind of have a hang into not what parenting means. I think we all figure that out on the way, but sort of get a grasp into.
It's not the parenting aspect that you're trying to grapple with in the first 3-4 months. It's the immediate change that presents itself in the form of this tiny mass of flesh that has no one else for support except you, and the cycle is endless, right? The cycle that you so well described is wake up, feed, burp, clean, wake up, feed, burp, clean every 2 hours. I mean, I kind of had read about it, but I'd never really heard it from someone as they had experienced it, right? So yeah, I agree with you. I think expectant parents should be told, hey, listen, as soon as the baby's out, the phase of having that aspiration to be a parent switches, because you're always on your feet and you're knee deep and elbow deep in a whole bunch of things, right? Like I feel like we don't talk about that enough as parents, or as moms especially.
I think as moms, it was only now that I have a circle of established moms with kids around my son's age or older. And you can at least ask, what to do. But at that point of time, my friends were mostly, people with kids well into their 20s. I didn't have friends who were just having kids around my age. Like, I mean, a good portion of my friends are still single. So I didn't have anyone that I was getting any notes from. Forget about, I didn't even have someone I could ask which pram is a good pram, right? Like, so I was feeling like I was at it alone, in that journey alone. And I think when they use the term like you require a tribe, right?
It takes a village to raise a child.
It takes a village to raise a child. I think it just feels now over a while, I think maybe in the last few years, I feel like I have that tribe of moms, and we stand up for each other, we show up. They know that if something happens and if my son is not well, I can last minute drop him and I still have work. Like I won't have to, I know I have a circle of friends I can rely on to show up for me. And all of that has now happened. But I think the initial years I felt like a solo warrior on a deserted island.
Year that I took a break from work, when I met friends, old friends, people I'd had wonderful conversations with before, I felt so involved in parenting. I always felt like, man, I'm not able to contribute to this conversation that's outside the sphere of, motherhood, or how do I relate my current experience to what they're saying or what the world is going through around me, right? Did you ever feel like that? Did you feel
I think first couple of years, because everything revolved around him. And there's so much that I'm learning, and putting in that every time there were conversations, my head is floating on a whole different tangent, right? Like, except now, maybe on the same context, I would be thinking about food. Well, I'm a foodie. I love food. So we could be having conversation about anything and I could be thinking about food. But at that point of time, all my thoughts revolved around eating, feeding, burping, massaging. Is my child okay? Oh, it became so weird. Like if I was without him, there's like this realization that a certain amount of your gray matter is now devoted to just where and what your child is up to.
Absolutely.
And that was so alienating because I could be sitting anywhere and just this constant awareness. Is he okay? Has someone fed him? Has his diaper been changed? So even when he was not in front of me or not, I'm not actively at that point with him, my mind was not free.
It's like the phantom limb scenario, right? Where you're just like, I can feel it. You're still stuck in that schedule, even if the child is not with you. Yeah, it's kind of funny how the mom brain works. You're right. And I must tell our listeners that ever since Tamanna scared me in the park after she accosted me and told me about the horrifying cycle of the first 3 months, I now do it to other mums. Of course, I don't accost them and, ruin their joyous pregnancy, Tamanna. I have kept that in mind. But I do like to pay it forward now and tell them, hey, listen, prep for the first 3 months. It's really hard.
No, I think now if I did meet someone who's pregnant, I'm not in the intense phase. So maybe I would be gentler and kinder.
Good to hear.
And also pamper them a little more because, they do deserve all the pampering for all the, that's what it felt like. When you take a goat and you pamper it and feed it well.
Oh my
and
God.
then you...
going there.
I felt like a goat that got butchered.
So I'm going to ask you about how it was to move on from the initial, let's say 1 year of strife and difficulty. What was it like after that? Because I know that you also had a very young son when the pandemic and the lockdowns hit, right? What was that phase like? Because the kind of job you do also meant that you were restricted and restrained yourself during that phase. What was it like? Did it feel doubly challenging?
I think being locked down and pandemic, if you ask anyone with a toddler at home at that phase, it was probably the most challenging phase to go through because not only were we taking care of a toddler, it was also cooking all the meals and doing the basic household work that you could at least delegate to a staff. Even now that had to be done. So I think that phase was a test in so many ways of what I was made of. I think it was just that it really centered in a lot of good practices for me because it was then I was always someone who was meditating on and off, and then I screened positive for pregnancy-induced hypertension. So I did bring in some of my meditation back at that time just to stay in a good space mentally. But just before the lockdown, when just the news of pandemic and seeing all the panic in the air, I took to meditation and I set in a lot of self-care practices during the pandemic, and I think they have really paid its way forward in so many ways. So because with that pressure, I think you have two options. You either break down and you kind of crumble and you're like, okay, this is too much for me to handle, or you find an opportunity to look back into what you could do. And for me, it became a very conscious practice that I realized that I needed more strength within. So taking a relook at anything that I could do when it came to self-care in a way that today I see what the payoff of those years have been.
And I guess a lot of young mums or new mums and even mums who run their own enterprises, the day can be so hard to plan and, to actually have a schedule. How does that work, in an industry where things might be last minute, things cannot be planned down to the T? How do you manage to divide your time?
Now I've realized the importance of having systems and structures in place. Of course, there's having a backup plan. And what happened is last few years as I was working, I also started between work and travel. I was also traveling a fair amount. So I realized that I need that backbone. So 4.5 years in, I've got a full-time nanny at home. I make sure that our schedules are matched between his father and me, that we have either one of us are available. So if I'm not there, he's aware that, my schedule is not going to be, and worst come worst, my mom is always, again, she's working, but I use my nanny just as a background support system, and make sure that there's a family member who is around and on support, and that's still a priority. I keep him at the centerfold, and today, wherever possible, I do take him along with me as well.
Right.
As he's growing up, I want him to be aware of the work side of things as well.
Right.
And I think a lot of parents don't show the work part. So I think, of course, there are times when I don't want to be disturbed and I want my peace and quiet, and I need sort of that environment where he's not there. But as much as possible, if I can have him along, I have him along. And then creating those systems and structures in place where, I'm working more during the hours when he's not there, and having that kind of flexibility, because I work for myself. I'm able to, like right now, recording this podcast, right? If you ask me to do it after school hours, I would say, hey, can we move it to earlier in the day because I'm working or I'm busy. But I think one of the things that I also learned is, because I have clients and because I'm also a part of larger corporates where I'm consulting, is I don't make the baby excuse. I don't say, hey, I'm going to be with my son. I say, hey, I'm busy after 3, or my day looks occupied after, and can we do this earlier? So a lot of clients are happy and flexible, and we move stuff, and when possible, and when I'm traveling, of course, I'm just like, my mom, daddy's in charge. I have a nanny.
That's nice. What are the parts of being your own boss where, it's either too challenging, to manage, because you are in an industry where you have to generate your own work, right? You have to network, you have to be out there. Your next gig is almost always a reflection of your last gig. Would that be a right assumption?
Not really.
No?
Okay. But the versatility doesn't make it easy. Why? Because it means that I have a set base of clients, which accounts for, say, 30% of my revenue or 40%, but 60% is new clients. So with new clients, there's always new coordination, new patterns, which means I'm the point of contact and not my team. So it comes with its own fair share of challenges.
Okay. So let me take that question one step back. The momfluencer is a big thing, right? And it, of course, gained traction, I feel, especially during the pandemic, because a lot more moms felt like they had the time or wanted to do something on their own and reach out, and they were on social media. And I feel like that's when it became a big thing. I know you're not a momfluencer, but as a person who is a mom and on social media, how does one actually go about doing that? How does one generate the work? How do you create a personality, let's say, that is entirely your own and has recall? What is that? What's the backstory to being on social media, to being a content creator?
It's so surprise is that I didn't ever wanted to be a content creator. It started more from clients I was consulting and working with, and they were like, could you front face us? Could you be the person who's talking about the brand and being more like the face of the brand and putting our content out there? And I've always looked at content creation as something that was not going to be as exciting or as involving for me. But today I really enjoy the creative process that goes behind the scenes, from the scripting to ideation with clients. I did actively take a step and look at what was the identity that I was putting out, because seriously, for the followers that I had because of my past work with in the movies or wherever, like I was just putting out content that pleased me. Whether it was my writing or thoughtful, like I thought about something and I want to share it with my followers, it was very centered around me. And then I was like, okay, wait, at this point of time, I've been doing this for clients and I've been working on brands and businesses with their social media. So if I'm going to do this, I have to take a call. Like, do I want to get into it? And if I'm going to get into it, I have to change my perspective and look at myself as a product. Look at myself as a brand instead of a person who is just there sharing her poetry, because that's what I was doing. I was putting up my writing, I was putting up snippets of everything. There's still a lot of versatile content. There's no single tone to the content, but the personality comes through in terms of finding that authenticity of who I am within, and the check marks of how the world wants to perceive me or finds comfort in perceiving me, because I realized that there are paths to people that it gets overwhelming. They can't see the serious poetry, they can't see the intense writer, they can only digest an X amount at a time. So what were the parts of me that I felt comfortable putting out, and then slowly diversifying them instead of at one go being the person? Because I noticed at one point in time when I was writing and I was explicitly talking about inner work, and this was more around the pandemic. I was so focused on mental health because I'd been I'm a certified life coach, a counselor, and during the pandemic I could see how people were crumbling, and I was working on myself as well during that time, and I really thought that this was a space that I wanted to give back to. So a lot of my content was at that point centered around self-work and inner work, and I noticed that I was dropping followers more faster than I was gaining them.
Oh, really? Okay.
On my social media and on social media in general, people are not here for the heavy stuff. They are here for the stuff that is lighthearted. And if I can find in ways in between to inspire them towards living healthier, feeling better, and small ways in which they can ground themselves instead of making it about the inner work. So even my team, like, they know this. I was like, think about the mom who puts vegetables in the sambar. Because you want to feed. I'm very clear that my purpose as a content creator is to be able to inspire, feed some of the good thoughts, and to be able to create change. But I noticed that there's a lot of content out there that's just driven around the short attention span. So I am, and I'm going to say, this is very open, I'm a clickbait, where the person who's clicking in is coming in for something else. They're coming in because they see a fun reel of me walking and doing something very fun. But if they stay enough, they would find this through thoughtful pieces shared in between, where I'm talking about fitness, where I'm talking about why this is important, or what I accomplished in my day by 8 a.m. By 9 in the morning, I've meditated, worked out, and my self-care practices as a way of finding inspiration through that, instead of trying to be like, hey, do this. I'm like, okay, I'm doing a lot of things in my life, but I'm also doing the stuff that is bringing me a lot of change. So instead of saying do this, I say I'm this. And if that can help inspire, and putting it a more vegetables in the sambar approach, that's been a major conscious shift for me in the last few years.
Why be the sambar when you can be a vegetable sambar? You're right. That's a good. Is it lucrative? For mums who might want to have a similar approach with their careers, where they either to become mum-centric social media content creators or just content creators. Is it lucrative?
I will actually capture a few different fields in this. I'll say content creators. I will also say actors, because a lot of time people would ask me, is acting lucrative? Is content creation lucrative? Is modeling lucrative? Because most of these questions are being asked by people who are trying to leave a mainstream job, a 9 to 5, and look for a plan B as to something that satisfies them. So I would say, don't think of it as content creation, acting. Firstly, you need to make sure that you are stable, you have enough, savings, things that get you off the ground. You're not dependent on your income that's going to come through.
Especially in the beginning.
At no point of time do you want to be dependent on just the income that you're going to create from one source of income alone. Content creator, I would say content creation again should be something that you're not looking at for a mainstay income. And I'd be very clear, Anjana, when you look at a profession as your mainstay income, then you start doing what money would make you do. Money has not there are a lot of brands. I say no to more brands than I say yes to, even the ones willing to give me the money that I quote. And I am on the premium side of the segment. I charge little higher than people who have the same number of followers, for the quality of followers that I have and the quality of content that I promise to paid clients. But at the same time, I'm very clear, if a brand comes in and they say, can you promote this brand that is a coconut oil, and we want to talk about, and this is a real story, we want to talk about how this can be used in the bedroom, And I said, I'm not comfortable doing that. It doesn't matter how much you're paying me.
Right.
But I mean, this is
Yeah.
partially being funny, but I have had brands that are talking about like, hey, can you support this? We are a hair oil and we want you to there's certain amount of false advertising that's involved. There was a seltzer brand that reached out to me. I hated the taste of it. They sent me a whole carton home and I shipped it back. They had paid me. Everything was agreed to. And I was like, see, I just can't support a brand that I wouldn't consume. And I don't think there are people in my space, because authenticity is something that's really important to me. At the end of the day, whether it's the online persona or the persona who's in front of you or the girl who you see in the park, I am the same me at all points of time in every room. If you can't be authentic and you sell yourself on social media because you're getting paid by Rummy Club paying you online an X amount of money to create content for them, then you lose your own voice. And I think it's very important to be in a space where you don't take choices, you don't make professional choices for money. And thankfully, I haven't done that. At any point of time, if I feel like the brand is not aligned to who I am, I say, no, I am not going to do this.
Right.
Because I don't see the alignment. If I'm going to promote a weight loss pill, I am not someone who would stand by products like that.
Right.
I would want to know, what are they putting inside? Is it safe for someone who's consuming? Am I promoting something that's going to hurt people? And I'm putting my face behind it. I don't take it lightly. And I'm very mindful of the impact that it has, and it doesn't matter if it reaches 5 people or 5,000. When you are saying something and you're taking a stance on something because somebody's paying you, I'm actually a buyer with most of the clients who work with me. Right. I've gone back and spent money with all my clients because maybe I didn't know their product, but now I know them and I love them. And I think that brings a certain sense of pride to me.
Right.
For self-fulfillment, not for anything else. And you can take those calls when you're not now putting all your eggs in one basket. Never do that. If you're going to go about the content creation journey, if you're a mom, go into it with, okay, I have time and I don't want to get into work, but don't think of what you're going to generate. Right. It will happen. And we can talk about how that can happen if somebody is looking for that.
That was what I was going to ask you next. How does one generate work in an industry like this?
I would say start first by making sure that you understand what's the basics, right? Like you understand how you can shoot, get into it, get your hands dirty, get a phone, start shooting, start figuring out angles, lighting, create content. It may never see the light of day. You may not end up liking it. And today the thing with phones and the tech that we have at hand is that you don't need a massive setup. You don't need an expensive iPhone.
That's true.
You can work with an Android. You have editing tools. It's more important to start off on the creation journey as a creator than wonder about how are you getting paid clients. Find out what is the kind of content that you want to be sharing. And remember, if it's parenting content, then you have to also know that if you're going to talk about diapers today and if you're going to talk about the next thing tomorrow, your journey will then have to be centered to a certain portion about parenting, because I've seen content creators who started out with parenting, but now their child is 7, 8 and they want to talk about fashion and they want to talk about other areas, and they're finding it hard to gain audiences or integrate because their content was so focused around toddler based content.
Right.
So I would say don't start out with, unless you want to stick to only toddler based content, be mindful that you're going to talk about, and if you are very straightforward that this is my page and I'm going to share parenting journey, then know that of course there are a lot of clothing wear brands that are centered around childcare, like products that, whether it's for skincare for children or whether it's around products that are for children, and you can always approach them. Initially it's going to start out as PR kits, and you just get the products in exchange and they would expect content from you at the end of the day. But as you're gaining your followers, if you can stand out with your quality of content, with the aesthetics that you're shooting, and few basic simple things, shoot with a lens that's clear, know your angles, just few basic things. If you can start out with that, when you hear UGC, user generated content, there are brands out there today that are just happy to take in a content creator with very small number of followers, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. They give them content and then they advertise on that content. So because they like the content that
Yeah.
that person is creating. So instead of focusing on the client first approach, focus on you are here to work
Yeah.
with a space that requires a certain sense of aesthetics.
Yeah.
If you can bring those aesthetics into your content, and then of course you would get clients.
Sometimes it's hard to find someone whose voice stands out. Is that something that's relevant and important as well, you think?
I think it's very important to find your own voice and find. I mean, there's always, we talk about personal branding and people think personal branding is something that's limited to a celebrity.
Right.
No, when you choose to put yourself out there, and you're going to be perceived by people more than a few, you are putting out an identity, and to have a certain set thing that kind of says something about you and what do you want to be perceived as, because and I think we spoke about it off the camera before, is that you are a product and
Right.
people are perceiving you a certain way, and you can sort of influence the way people perceive you.
Yeah.
Brands are doing it all the time.
Yeah.
So you choose how you want to be perceived as. Do you want to be seen? There's a certain kind of identity that you want to be seen with, and you would attract brands on the similar note.
Right.
So if you're into health and fitness, and like there is a certain amount of content that I use that is centered around health and wellness and fitness. So I do get brands that are centered around that, and to me that's a win-win.
Yeah.
Because I would want to be advocating for brands
Yeah.
that don't use or that are chemical free and that are good for the environment or good for you.
Yeah.
And I would want to advocate for them. So it gets me more of those brands.
Yeah.
So when you choose that identity and those value system that you align to, and you can communicate that in a way that your audience aligns with them too,
Yeah.
I think
And
that's the win-win proposition.
It also helps to retain your authenticity, right? If you're aligning your personality with a certain brand. So I guess with a brand that resonates with you.
Yeah, I think that's it adds to the authenticity, but I think this is a good groundwork for people in general, even if you're a non-content creator. Knowing your values
Yeah.
really solidifies a lot of what you're going to do in life, and especially for moms when they're starting out after having a child, a lot of them rethink their careers.
Yeah,
Because like me, they might have thought that they're going to go back straight into work, and then they reconsider what is the possibility that would allow me to be able to retain a certain amount of social contact, a certain amount of work or revenue,
Yeah.
but also allow me to be a mom.
Yeah.
And they put that forward too.
Yeah.
So if you center your values in a way that you can speak them,
Yeah.
and that you're clear on them, like growth is a very important value to me. So you would find a certain amount of my content that's placed around growth.
Right.
And in fact, if you can say it out loud and you can say why and why is it a value that you're passionate about, like the environment, right? There are degrees to which we are all passionate about the environment.
Yeah.
Somebody's going as far as to use sustainable clothes.
Yeah.
Somebody's going maybe just recycling their wardrobe and making sure that the clothes that they don't use get loving homes.
Uh-huh.
These are all variations in the scale of,
Yeah.
but an awareness of values is what creates that authenticity.
Yeah, great tip. I'm going to switch up from talking about creation of content and ask you something that's always on my mind. Technology is everywhere. Our kids have access to it way beyond anything that we saw growing up. And I feel like we probably don't even know how to control this, right? As someone in the know of how social media works, how do you see the influence of this in the next generation? And do you have any fears about this? Like, I have palpable and unmitigated fears about what the future holds in terms of technology and what it can do to my child.
One thing that I actively see it doing to children and adults is it's affecting our attention span. Mm-hmm. It's affecting how much of being we are doing. It's kind of giving a sense of false productivity, even to us as adults, just scrolling. Like something bad or something negative happens, you first just scroll through your social media feed because you just want to change your state of being, mm-hmm. instead of just sitting down with those emotions, because you're like, yeah, who wants to sit down with something that seems useless or seems rather small? So it's not just the children, it's the adults.
Yeah.
And as someone who is aware of it in different ways, in having seen what it does to adults, in also having read up about it and the fact that it actually shrinks certain areas, so, screen time, TV time, exposure to digital devices shrinks certain areas of your child's brain as they're growing up. I would say I'm the Momzilla version. My child hadn't had candy till he was 4.
Okay.
He has no access to digital devices at
Right.
all. We do watch our favorite movies on the weekend together. It's not that he doesn't get any screen time. But those few movies, we might watch maybe 1 or 2 movies max in a week, and that's his only screen time.
Right.
He's allowed to use the phone to make calls to his grandparents,
Right.
video call. And if he is with me and we are traveling, he's allowed to use the phone to take pictures and videos. He has not used YouTube.
Right.
He doesn't know where cartoons exist, and he has not watched any cartoons.
Right.
I mean, accidentally, maybe while channel shifting, but till date, he has not watched any
Right.
cartoons. Because as a creator, as well as someone who is aware of these effects, I know even if I keep him away as an adult, what it might do is he's able to then see that, wait, I'm becoming shorter in my attention span, because I see that. I went through something last year, like I lost my grandmom last year, and I'm someone who has very healthy coping mechanisms in place. Like, I meditate daily. I wouldn't call it a coping mechanism, but I'd say I have very healthy self-care practices that allow me to bounce back from setbacks. But I still saw myself binging on social media for a few months after. And I have locks on my devices to time myself out, and I still saw myself going down that rabbit hole. And it took me a couple of months, and I was like, Z, I actually told my son at that point of time, Z, Mama is feeling a little addicted. When you see her use, just remind her, and my screen would keep reminding me.
Yeah.
So it did take me a certain effort to come back. But if that can happen to me as an adult, we are expecting too much of our children if we think they can self-regulate their usage, and knowing the harmful effect it does, I don't think they're in that space to take a call.
True.
So as much as possible and as long as possible, I am not going to be exposing him to screen time.
Your mantra would be to just kind of
Keep it to
abstain.
0.
Right.
And stick it to the
Yeah.
movies that we enjoy together as family time on weekends.
That's also been like my go-to, method of coping with it. But sometimes I feel like, oh my God, like other kids seem to know technology so much better than my child, and I'm always worried mine might become slightly dim-witted, because he'll come and ask me really strange questions like about, and I know nothing about video games because I'm like least tech savvy. But I guess they also, because they are this generation, even if they have not had exposure, when they do have the exposure, I do believe that they'll catch up really quickly.
I agree to that. So there was a point though in my parenting journey that I realized, I think he was maybe 1, and he used to fuss a lot while food, and I realized that if you show child a screen, he starts opening his mouth.
Yeah.
I did that once, and I was amazed. I was like, wow, okay, it's a hack. I can do this again. The second time when I put the food in front of him, he looked at my phone.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, this is me doing this when I'm already aware of what it's gonna set him into. So now I think I saw even my friends' kids who were, and I saw that they were like, oh my God, they were so excited. If you put the screen in front of the child, the child opens their mouth and eat. And I was like, the child is not even aware what they're eating.
Yeah.
Suddenly they're eating spicy food, and they've never eaten spicy. They're not even aware what they're putting inside their mouth. The mouth just opens like a parrot, and anything or everything can be put in. And that just became such a fear for me. I was very, very mindful when I was feeding him not to associate feeding with sleeping or peaceful time when I was breastfeeding him, to not associate both together, because soothing should be outside of food. And so when that one exposure to screen happened, and I realized that this could very well set off a tangent of path where it becomes easy for me, and it becomes like, okay, made my time spent on feeding him lesser. Like, there's a joke I have, Zidane, every time I feed you, I get a few new grey hair.
Yeah,
because he takes an hour to finish his meal. So it was a very conscious practice to not include not include any screen time while feeding him. And I also went back recently, because I had decided when he turned 7, I'm going to give him an iPad. And I think when he was 6, I was like, all my friends' kids have one. It looks like a natural progression. He's going to learn technology. What if he wants to? And there's so much, right? Like kids can learn coding these days, and there's no age for technology, and maybe he can learn something good. I spoke to a couple of friends, who have kids and who have kids in sort of towards their teens, late teens, and they were like, we regret handing our child a phone, and we did that when he turned 12, and I still regret it.
Oh man.
And their feedback was and some of them gave the device and then choose to lock it away, because they were like, you can't keep tabs on what they get exposed to.
Wow.
Right now you can put a certain amount of, you watch it in front of me, but you have to imagine you can't do that every day.
Yeah,
and you set aside a certain amount of screen time for them, but it's not doing them any good. And what I also notice is children lose out on their imagination with screen time.
Absolutely.
So I spoke to my friends who were older, and I was like, nope, we'll figure it out when he can. I'm very happy with a child who is going to be obsolete tech wise, and then having to figure it out by a certain age. The downsides and the upsides, I think if I can expose him to an age where he's able to notice his patterns and self-regulate and be aware, is what I would choose. And I don't think that's for another few years.
Yeah. So there you have it, folks. From a social media star, keep your children away from the gadget, right? You heard it from the horse's mouth. Okay, we're at the end of this chat, as lovely as it has been. Tamanna, I'm going to ask you for a few quick recommendations. Something you read recently that really sparked something, or something you enjoyed watching on Netflix or anywhere else where you watch stuff, or even a podcast if you've heard anything that you've loved.
Wabi Sabi was again a very good reminder to be present.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for chatting with us and telling us about all the invisible things you do to make the world go round. And I'm going to quickly ask you to leave us with your Instagram handle and where people can find you on social media.
My Instagram handle is Tamanna Pasha. That's TAMANNA PASHA_official. That's where you can find me, sharing little bits of everything.
Lovely. We'll see you there, and I'll see you around in the neighborhood as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and if I see you scaring any more moms, I'm going to come after you with my broom. Right?
I'm hoping next time we're going to do it together.
Yeah. Okay. That's a strategy I can buy into. Thank you for chatting with us, and that's it from us, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next episode of The Invisible Work. Thank you for listening to Invisible Work. I'm Anjana Panna, and be sure to follow us on Spotify and on YouTube, and of course check out our website, invisiblework.mom/deals, for all listener deals. It's all in there, so be sure to go and check it out. You can also send me your comments and feedback at anjana@invisiblework.mom. We look forward to your support. Keep listening to Invisible Work.